Greetings, my friends. Welcome to the next episode of the MinMob Podcast. Jason here, joined by my buddy Alex across the pond in Germany. We're going to jump into what's going on in the crypto world, talk NFTs, talk upcoming artwork, talk GoodFellas, talk collecting, and all the good stuff that we normally do. Hang on, and we'll check in with Alex first. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
Hey man, I'm doing really good. Looking forward to jump into all the topics you mentioned. Of course, jumping into what's been going on in the Goodfellas world as well, the artist incubator, and a process of videos, like a video process that is Daria going to show on her account with the sirens. We'll jump into all that today. So I'm looking forward. And as you said, right, crypto has been like pretty interesting the past week. A lot of stuff happened. One thing I just saw a couple minutes ago is Solana introducing a platform called tokens, which is, I think you mentioned it in the conversation we had before. This has been available for quite some time, but it looks like you'll get a better platform to maybe the with another interface on another UI. But Solana allows the user to buy metals, stocks, ETFs, and all that tokenized on their blockchain, which is obviously great for adoption. So I think you mentioned it, like right, like this has been available before. Was there any kind of website UI you know of where you could basically buy ETFs on Solana?
I don't know about buying ETFs, but in terms of tokenizing stocks, I'm assuming it would all be rolled up onto the technology that Solana has been promoting for the last, I don't know, 2-3 months at least. I'd have to go back to their timeline and see, but there's several organizations that are enabling what they're calling RWA, which to me isn't really RWA. It's just like putting a layer. It's like a layer of derivatives on top of stocks where you can trade stocks as crypto, and then of course the market would be open 24/7, 7 days a week, as opposed to being opened and closed, over the course of Monday through Friday trading, and, having to have a special access to have, early or before hours and after hours trading, like a big financial house. But yeah, as far as I know, this was already enabled, and this looks like one of the first platforms where you can kind of do research on the different tokens. I just went to the website. It looks like you could basically pull up different things and kind of view what's happening with them. But as far as integration is concerned, it doesn't look to be final yet. Although I think the interesting thing on the timeline that I saw was that it's going to be supported by the Solana Foundation, which of course has, a vast amount of resources they can throw at this. And I think that, the further we go with this tokenization of like stocks, the closer we get to a global market, which is going to be really interesting. So like if I want to buy and sell stocks in, Japan, like I don't have access to the Nikkei directly. I have to go through a third party. But if those stocks are tokenized and I'm in the US, then now all of a sudden I could buy and sell these as crypto assets, quote unquote, wrappers to the underlying asset. And now all of a sudden the global market's available to the average person. So this is kind of a big deal, and it's going to create more utility, obviously, for the Solana token, because fees will obviously be paid in Sol, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, there's a lot of really cool things that can be, sort of surmised from this advance in the tech. And this is something that I think everyone thought Ethereum was going to run away with, and so far they haven't. So it's been really kind of cool to see Solana be picked up by all the majors, from like credit card companies. Like I think it was MasterCard just announced this past week a partnership with Solana. PayPal just chose Solana for their stablecoins backbone. Like all of these different major companies are picking Solana, which is kind of a really cool thing. So if you're holding Solana, I think you're doing the right thing. Stake it, earn it, buy more of it. I don't think you're going to be disappointed in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I saw that post from Solana, or that was created today, I think, when you see the handle tokens, it's like you see that they are serious about it, right? Because obviously that was a handle that was occupied before, and I think they paid like plenty of money to get that handle. And yeah, I haven't checked the platform. Unfortunately, it looks like potential damage. Like it, for some reason, the website is not safe for me, so I cannot see it. Um, let's see. But yeah, obviously, good for adoption. I love that they focus on that kind of stuff as well. And you mentioned Ethereum. And there was one little post that I read today that I wanted to discuss. And it was basically about the topic whether Ethereum will lose its number 2 spot in crypto. And there is like a poly market a prediction for that. You can bet on it. And the probability is 57% actually, which is, obviously quite high. And that has been circulating on crypto Twitter today pretty much. And yeah, the metrics that look bullish but do not create buy pressure, because we see many people, speaking about Ethereum is still making moves. And if you look at RWA, for example, institutions like BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, and UBS are tokenizing assets on Ethereum, which sounds bullish, but they do not need to buy ETH to do it, right? What else do we have? About 60% of DeFi's TVL sits on Ethereum, but TVL is capital locked in protocols, not market buy pressure. Layer 2s, we've spoken about layer 2s all the time, right? And what was like the main point? ETFs, inflows. Yeah, it was basically making a big comparison of Ethereum and Solana as well, right? And we've been speaking so much about Solana lately that I don't see any good reason why Solana would not outperform ETH in the near future, right? Like especially with all the stuff that is happening behind the scenes. You mentioned Mastercard. I think I saw a tweet today from MoonPay, which is a pretty big bet platform as well. Used to like for financial services online a lot, and it made like a post just repeating the word Solana like 50 times, and it's like all the financial institutions, like Solana is the currency that will be used in people's everyday lives. And I don't see, Ethereum do that. So I think it's just a matter of time until Solana will surpass ETH market cap wise. What do you think?
It's certainly possible. I mean, Solana surpassed ETH in RWA activity or individual active RWA type wallets. That was something that they announced recently. And of course, people are saying, oh, whatever, that doesn't mean anything. But then that was scrubbed for like wash trading and like repeated wallets. So it's significant that, they would gain ground at all. Right now, Ethereum's sitting at about 280 billion in market cap. You've got Solana sitting at about 54. So, Solana is about 1/5, at this point, about 1/5 the size of Ethereum. But I remember when it was 1/10 and 1/20th, so they've definitely made up some ground in terms of current market caps. Now, obviously, ETH has had a really rough go. It hasn't done really much of anything in terms of price action. Solana hit its all-time high and pulled way back, and it had new activity, whereas Ethereum, was barely able to do anything. It got close, but it didn't really do much. So, I think at the end of the day, there are a lot of green shoots that you could sort of look to see Solana gaining ground. And then when you compare the two use cases, I've said this many times, as a business or as, like an artwork curator, like if you're a big artwork curator like Christie's, for example, Christie's is doing a lot with NFTs. Do you really want to pay extra, when you don't have to? That's the question that a business has to ask itself. And there's a few utilities that exist on the Christie's website or a link from the Christie's website that they've invested in that basically do different types of provenance and like buy-sell tracking. There's a service that they provide where you can actually log a transaction. You just like type it in, log it, and then you would pay. And it exists on ETH, so you would obviously be paying more than you would pay for something like a Solana transaction. So for the average person who's logging their information there, I mean, they're going to want to use something cheaper and faster than Ethereum. Now, will that come to be? I don't know. I mean, because you have to realize there's going to be sunk costs. Ethereum does have first mover advantage, so it's their market to lose. So we'll see if Ethereum can start making up ground in the near future. But so far, the leadership at Solana has been pretty solid and pretty steady, and I see no reason not to be acquiring Solana going forward. And I see every reason to drop L2s left and right because they're basically useless.
You reminded me of a post that I saw yesterday from an account called I think Dot Machine. He was like for some reason he was hating Solana, and he was like a Polkadot believer, and he was like
Polkadot.
he was
That
yeah
should tell you right there. You don't need to listen.
yeah, but that's funny because he was like yeah, the only reason Solana peaked last cycle was like because of the meme coins. You know, it peaked when you had the Trump coin, and Solana was just lucky that all the meme coins were launched on there, and basically saying that this was the only utility and that there is no other use case for Solana, and that this is never going to happen again because, you know, meme coin cycle is over, blah blah blah. And then the first comment was like, all right, then tell me what Polkadot does. And then there was like no response, right? Like Polkadot, obviously, I don't even know what it's like. I'm not sure if it's like an ecosystem, but you know, if you look at all the coins outside the top 10, what do they do? Like, I have no freaking idea.
The best use case for all these stupid altcoins is to lose your money. That's their number one use case, as evidenced by history. So, you know, we can talk about use cases all day long, but, you know, if you can have the best use case in the world, but if you're not selling it, you're not being adopted, it doesn't matter. And unfortunately, for a lot of these, you know, lower tier alts, excuse me, can't clear my throat today. Unfortunately, for all these lower tier alts, you know, there's just been no adoption. There's been no use cases. The token inflation on a lot of these chains is insane, you know, like 13, 14, 15% payouts of staking. When the token runs, the founders dump the token left and right just to make money. You know, so like at the end of the day, if you're not seeing, you know, major companies picking up the tech or using the tech for any specific thing, it doesn't really matter how good the tech is because the market's telling you we don't want it. You know, now if that could all change tomorrow, if Polkadot or ADA or Cardano, whatever you want to call it, decides to wake up and build a sales force and say, listen, we're going to build a utility around this particular, you know, use case, whether it's, you know, stable token rails or whatever, and we're going to have a dedicated sales team out in the world, you know, making sure that it's adopted and selling people on the idea, then things might change, right? But that hasn't happened. And in Web3, again, I can't count the number of times people keep talking about decentralization and community and this and that and the other thing. But the truth is none of that shit matters if the market that you seek to serve doesn't care about what you're doing. So, you know, your number one goal, and, you know, you and I have this conversation all the time, you have to tell people what you're doing and why it's useful. And you have to sell them on the idea. And this idea that people are just going to randomly find you and you're going to magically, you know, make money in the, you know, the world of magic internet money, it's not true. There's just too many tokens. There's too much competition. And at the end of the day, if you're not providing value to a group of people and they don't see adoption, the token price is going nowhere, especially if you have massive inflation like Cosmos, for example, you know, where it's like 13% payouts. And I mean, this is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous to think anything otherwise. And it just comes from the idea that, you know, a lot of this stuff is being built by people who've never built a real business. They may have worked for one, or they may have, you know, like been a party to one as a contractor, you know, doing performing some role. But if you haven't actually seen that businesses require cash flow, and cash flow comes from sales, and sales comes from, you know, a value proposition to a marketplace, then you're just kidding yourself about what's possible. So, I mean, until the market, and I use that word instead of community, until the market learns what you're doing is valuable to them, then you have no chance, like literally no chance at all at doing anything other than just kind of muddling along. And again, going to quote unquote effectively zero, which means that your token might have $1 worth of value, or in the case of Polygon, I don't know what Polygon is today, like 12 cents or whatever it was, 15 cents. Like it might have some value, but if you're not acquiring new users, the token is effectively at zero, because those users, new users, if they're not seeing it, adopting it, using it, there's no future there. So you're just basically stuck in this horizontal plane that's never going to go anywhere. And the faster people learn these lessons and move to chains that have active communities and are building use cases around the use of the token, so that even if what you're doing is completely useless, but you're actually building or holding that token and you gain in value by the fact that the marketplace is deciding there's value in the tokens, you know, nothing changes. And so right now we're dealing with sunk costs around the consolidation era. We are seeing consolidation of quality, but we're also seeing a lot of stubbornness around people having sunk costs like, oh, I've been on this chain since the word go, and oh, la di da, we're not going to leave, we're going down with the ship type attitude, instead of saying, what's best for our collectors or what's best for our organization is to move to a quote unquote database, which is all a blockchain is, that has more activity, more users. So, until those lessons are learned, and again, like if you look at the market, the lessons are always learned the hard way. When people see this stuff muddling along, years on end, and they finally decide, oh, now it's time to move, or now it's time to do something different, by that time, the best opportunities have already passed. So, yeah, I mean, I think that when you zoom out and you look at what's happening, you have to just examine your behavior as a market participant. And, I have to say, like, as, a Solana proponent here today, like if Solana starts losing ground, I'm going to be the first one to say, listen, we need to start thinking about going somewhere else, and if we don't see adoption, then we need to think about going somewhere else, at least until the time arrives where apps exist that prove there's no real, need to be on a specific chain or a specific database, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, first, when it comes to altcoins in general, I think what most people do not see is that, most of these coins have, especially, during the bull runs, they've hired so many people. They got developers, they got people doing the tech in the background. They got an infrastructure that costs money, right? And you can publicly see the revenue of those chains, and you can see if they actually earn money, with or by operating, that chain. And the truth is, the result you will see is that most of these chains do not make money. So the only way for them to pay their employees and maintaining the infrastructure is by selling tokens. So in the end, with most of the projects out there, you will not be able to, I think one thing that kind of destroyed people's, not mentality, but positioning in the crypto space are the two terms paper hands and diamond hands, right? Like whenever you paper hand something and it goes up, you feel like, oh no, I paper handed it. I would have made so much more money if I kept the token or the asset. And on the other hand, you have people like diamond handing things. This is like always like people's people's justification for holding bullshit, right? Like I diamond handed, and that I'll either go down with it, or I'll hold it until it goes up. And for some reason, crypto projects manage to like easily build a like an unrealistic expectation of where the token would go in the future. And that's quite interesting because I think the reason for that is that we had that 2021 bull run where everything went up, regardless of the, what projects build or what the history of a project was. You just had to drop a token. You needed a couple members, and suddenly everything went up, up only. And this is probably never going to happen again, but people are still stuck in that mindset of, I'll just need to hold, and when the next bull run appears, it will go up and I'll make a lot of money. And that's obviously false. And it's good that this is wrong nowadays because, now we can actually consolidate to quality and, grow adoption and all that. And this is how the market matured. And we can see one guy who is really like Bitcoin is his conviction play, because Michael Saylor bought another 22,000 Bitcoin today or yesterday for 1.5 billion. And man, that's quite a number, right?
That's a big number, yeah, for sure. And, you can say what you want to about Saylor, but he's creating some derivative products on top of Bitcoin. And basically, he's turned his operating business into a financial institution. So he went from like a $500 million company to a multi-billion-dollar company in the span of a very short time period, just the last few years, and has created products that are yielding double-digit returns to holders, banking on Bitcoin almost as if real estate agents and brokers have banked on real estate for years. So it's pretty genius what he's done. And, when he's buying, he's in the market buying, he's basically shown his cards, like he's never going to sell. He's never going to stop buying. And so I wouldn't bet against him. The guy's been pretty successful in everything that he's done. He's called a lot of the sort of market plays done by phones, like Apple. He wrote a book called The Mobile Wave and predicted a lot of what was going to happen in the mobile world. And it's just genuinely a fairly smart guy who's, considered a lot of options and looked at a lot of things. And having sat behind the chair or the desk of a CEO, has access to a lot of different understandings that financially most people would never understand. So the financial derivatives that he's created to run on top of Bitcoin are absolutely genius. And, I think that the average person would do well to kind of at least dip a toe and see what's going on there.
Absolutely. And I think there are even some copycats already to trying to imitate the system from, what Saylor is doing, I think even on Ethereum and other chains as well. And yeah, it's good to see. Like it's good to see that. I mean, what people have been fearing is that once Bitcoin price goes below Saylor's average, that he's somehow getting forced to sell, and this is going to to cause like a big dump for everyone, and he'll be forced to sell even more, and Bitcoin is going to zero or whatever. But it's like I think with the strategy he built and with how everything is organized, there's actually no way of him like going bankrupt, right? Like he just keeps buying, right?
There's always a way. I mean, he's kind of laid it out before in a few different interviews, and without going too deep into the financial products that he's created, because that would be basically like a class in some of this stuff. He's basically said Bitcoin has to drop to a certain level, but not only does it have to drop to a certain level for him to have any loans called, it would have to stay there for an extended period of time. Mm-hmm. So it's not just that he's buying Bitcoin, it's also that he's sitting on a cash reserve. And he's also said that, if the worst case scenario hit, he would sell some Bitcoin to make his loans good. So I think at the end of the day, what he's done is very smart. I think most people might consider it very risky. But again, if you're sitting on enough cash to weather the storm has to be a really, really, really long one. And I think they've planned for multiple cycles, 4 years plus, that they could sustain low-priced Bitcoin with the cash and with their current operating standards. So yeah, I wouldn't bet against him. I think they've considered that. Now he does say some stupid shit when it comes to like valuations, because again, no one can assign valuations outside of that particular day. And some of his prognostications are exceptionally rosy. But again, that's to be expected from someone who's promoting this particular product. So I just think if you look at the math, they're in a good position. It may not be perfect. I don't think any position ever is. But if you're sitting in a good position, you're sitting on cash to weather any storm. The storm can be multi-years long. And then you have assets to sell to cover on top of that. I mean, it's gonna take a lot. Like it's gonna take a tremendous amount of negative weather for him to have to become a forced seller.
Yeah, absolutely. And considering, looking at all the other companies and big guys acquiring Bitcoin, it's questionable whether we will ever reach to that point. I think you mentioned in the meeting before that you found some news on, there was one topic you wanted to dive in. I think it was something with gamified assets or something. Let's see, I wrote it down. Something Bitcoin related. You read some news that you found right before we jumped onto the episode. Can you remember?
Trying to remember what you're talking about, yeah. I do not remember. Where was it? Something about NFTs.
Yeah, right.
I was just mentioning like the liquid. I was just doing a little bit of research on Super Rare's liquid editions, and Super Rare does it's basically like a gated marketplace. So you have to be accepted onto their platform. Like they have a curation process where you have to pass that curation process to be featured, and hence the name Super Rare. And then once you are featured, they run different types of promotions to get traffic to your product, to your artwork or what have you, which I think is genius, and it's one of the things that we want to build into ultimately into the GoodFellas platform, or one of the platforms that we're focused on creating. But the thing that I was just noticing was they had what they call liquid editions, which are basically editions that sort of change due to market conditions, right? So like you can have traits or activity inside the NFT, almost like it's programmable, that basically update themselves or change themselves depending on what a particular market fluctuation might look like, which is kind of similar to one of the technologies that we talked about in Bitcoin, where like when certain blocks are mined or certain transaction hashes are created, that you can have code that basically reads that as it's time to release a new trait, and that trait can then come alive and be minted as ordinals. So it's kind of the same sort of a thing. Like liquid edition just means it's changeable, which is interesting, but it's already been done on several different chains. So I don't think a lot of artwork marketplaces have embraced it yet, but they are one of the few.
All right.
You're
We'll have
on
to
mute
cut
for like
that.
30 seconds there. Yeah.
Yeah. For some reason, my mic just plugged off. But yeah, you can hear me now?
Yeah, you're back.
Perfect. All right. Let's jump a little bit into Solana galleries again. We've been speaking about that lately a lot. And I know that you have been reaching out to many artists recently, asking them whether they are fine minting your pieces or minting their pieces into your gallery. What do you think is a reasonable reason for people to reject that request?
Well, it doesn't matter what I think. I mean, if I'm an artist and I have a collection of pieces that I'm creating that are, like pieces that I want to keep together, I could use that as a reason, or I could just simply not feel like it. It doesn't matter because I've created the piece and I've minted it and I've done whatever I wanted to do. It's my property. So I have no qualms with people doing whatever they want to do with their property, the thing for me with like personal galleries is if I'm buying one of ones, again, this is extracurricular activities outside the context of a traditional collection. Like you don't want to break up a traditional collection, just like you would never break up a traditional collection of Pokemon cards. Like, if you put a Pokemon card in a baseball card stack, it would look stupid. It doesn't make any sense. It has no context. The gamification piece is gone. So we never want to break up collections. Or they wouldn't be collections. So, at the end of the day, artists can use any sort of rationale they want. Specifically in my gallery, what I'm looking for is one of ones. Like I want one of one art. And to me, one of one art doesn't necessarily belong to a collection or inside a collection. So when I'm approaching artists and I'm asking them about pieces, they may have in mind a collection of like 6 one of ones that they're calling a collection. And they may not want to quote unquote break that up. And that's fine. Like it makes no difference to me whatsoever. I'm not here to convince someone otherwise. I'm just going to move on to one of the other tens of thousands of artists out there doing great work. But, if I'm mirroring the real world and let's say I'm, Picasso and I'm doing, a prints or whatever, I'm doing etchings, which are types of prints. And I have a series of like 8 different etchings that I'm including in this print run. Well, if I sell to one guy over here and some girl over there and then the guy down the street, then by nature of reality, the collection is going to get broken up. That doesn't mean the idea in my head of the collection of pieces gets broken up. It just means that their locations becomes different. So if I'm, and again, this is one of one art. Like if I'm doing one of one art inside the context of a collection, on chain, it doesn't mirror what would happen in real life. Just like if I buy one of one art from Rarible or wherever, it doesn't mirror what would happen in real life unless it goes into a space that I own and control. So the whole point behind personal galleries is to bring artwork into a space that makes you responsible for the artwork. And this is a foreign concept in the NFT world and a very familiar one in the real world. So, NFT artists have been trained to think that if they mint on, object or whatever platform, that this piece goes into their collection. And so in effect, if you buy a piece from their collection, you're kind of renting it because it's not really yours. Now you could burn it. Like if once you own a piece, you can burn it, but you can't do anything else with it out in terms of ownership. Like you couldn't move it to another collection. You couldn't move it to a different chain. So it sort of, eliminates your responsibility and ownership in that, like the artist might be responsible for paying for storage fees, or the artist might wake up one day and decide, you know what, I don't like this collection anymore. I'm just going to kill it. I'm going to burn it off. And all you're left holding is a little, JSON file that points to where the artwork used to be. Or actually that JSON file disappears and the artwork just sits on chain or whatever. So, like if we're going to have, sort of, real world activity, then we have to have the tech mimic the real world activity. Now, if the real world activity is not conducive or doesn't actually serve people, then the real world activity will cease, as would and something else would take its place. But humans have been buying and selling artwork for thousands of years now, and there's a way that works, and it is provenance. Goes through the hands of a broker in most cases, especially if it's high-end art. And that art broker sells to a collector who then pays them a commission and then owns the artwork. And the artist has nothing to do with where the art ends up. In NFTs, it's exactly backwards. And so if you think about that and think it through, the implications for your ownership are very, I guess I would say, should be considered very, very carefully. So if you're not tied to an organization that's building a specific collection, like a collection of Pokemon cards or a collection of baseball cards or basketball cards, as one example, if you're not inside that collection and gamifying it, and there's certain rules and sort of, behaviors that govern being in that collection or a member of that collection, then we're talking about one-of-one art, and one-of-one art is separate, and one-of-one art should be treated differently. And, again, this comes from probably the genesis of NFTs, because, so much of the NFT world was launched as collections. So people think in terms of collections. It's a collection of 10,000, a collection of 5,000, a collection of whatever, 3333, whatever number they chose. And that's fine. But then when you start adding one-of-one art on top of that, it's not necessarily the same thing. And so we need to think differently about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But like, what do you think? When it comes to artists, what do you think are the real concerns? Because when I think about, letting collectors mint into their collections, obviously artists need to give away some of the control. But I think one of the main reasons, many artists probably think stuff like this is like the current state is how it's always been done, right? And that, of course, tends to sound convincing when the current system already works in your favor, right? Because the truth is, right now, artists hold most of the structural power through minting and the update authorities, of course. So it's not surprising that the existing model feels fine from that side. So I feel like if you um, would give away some of the responsibility to the collector and let him curate, like what I don't get is, and why I would love to get some more voices from artists to that topic. What's your disadvantage in that case? Like, why don't you let him do that? And like, especially because we have so many artists on in Web3 space who come from traditional art, right? They're already painted on canvases. They probably sold their pieces, so they should be familiar with that system. And in the end, we are still struggling, sometimes at least, to convince people that this is probably a. We're not sure if it's like the optimal way, but we feel like it's worth a shot because we feel like you should own what you buy, and you shouldn't be like you should not like be kept away by or of minting that piece just because you feel like you want to maintain and still keep the control of everything. So I'm not sure. Like, I feel like artists get more open the more we, get people building their galleries and the more they understand the model, the concept. But I feel like the future of collecting is, yeah, because do you feel that the main issue of approaching artists and convincing, or not even convincing them, like it's more like explaining the concept to them, do you feel like the main barrier for them is that they don't understand what you are doing, or that it's like they really do not want to give away control?
Are you asking me personally?
Yeah, when you approach artists, like what do you think is
I don't
their
give a
main
shit.
issue?
I don't give a shit what their issue is, because their issue is not more important than my issue. My issue is ownership. Does that make sense? So when I come to an artist and they say
Absolutely.
no, I'm cool with that. I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like I totally get it. If that's where your mind is and that's what you want, I'm not here to convince you otherwise, right? The worst thing you can do when you're trying to, get headway in, I'm going to use the word sell because we're basically selling people on an idea, right? I'm going to use the word sell because it's directly tied to any idea that humans exchange where there's a disagreement or there's a potential disagreement. We're trying to sell one another on the idea, right? So, for example, my wife, when we get up in the morning, she wants me to greet her and say good morning and have like this warm interaction before we talk about anything important, right? And I don't care, right? I just want to get to it. But she sold me on the idea that my day is going to be better if I greet her, with like a smile and some warm words and we have some small talk before we jump into what we're going to get going on that day, right? And so I'm a buyer of that idea. She sold me on that idea. So when I talk to an artist, it's the same thing. I'm going to do my best to convey the reasons why I feel like this is important. And the artist might say, you're full of shit. This is stupid. I'm never going to do this. And I might be like, oh, yeah, that's totally cool, man. I get it. And then I'm on to the next artist because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them. And I don't care what their reasons or excuses are. I'm not here to convince them, right? If they have questions, that's when we have a conversation. But if they just come back with something like, yeah, I'm out, or yeah, doesn't sound like something I'd be interested in, I'm not going to be like, well, why? Why aren't you interested in it? Please tell me. Because it changes the posture of the conversation. Like when you're selling someone an idea, you need to have posture and you need to believe in what you're doing. And of course, in Web3, where so many people are young or either inexperienced or just scared and hiding behind PFPs, there's a lot of like just timid people who don't push, And then when they do push, they sound like beggars, right? So like if someone turns you down, wash your hands and go on to the next thing. It's really that simple. Go and find another artist because I promise you there's 15 other artists who have work that's just as good. And you can find one of them and they will, become someone that you can develop a relationship with. And then what happens over time is your reputation precedes yourself, right? So when I go to an artist now, I've got 46 pieces in my personal gallery. So I've been doing this for a while, right? And when I approach them, I have a similar approach. And I always include a link to my gallery because it's substantial and it points to some of the stuff that I'm interested in. And they can pull up the metadata and they can see that they're credited and they can see that they're among other good artists, right? And when they see those things, it makes my sell, my idea of selling, the idea that I'm trying to sell to them much more palatable. Because they're not the first ones. They're not the ones breaking ground. They're not the ones taking the arrows in the back, like the people moving west in the early days, right? So when you're talking to people and they have interesting questions, you want to answer the questions. If you're talking to someone and they're closed off, then you want to avoid that person in terms of trying to sell them on this idea. And you never want to give away posture. And if someone's being rude, which hasn't happened, I mean, very few people are, but if someone's being rude, I'll just simply say, okay, cool, not a good fit. I'll talk to someone else. And then that's the end of the conversation. And then if they come back and they respond, I still don't respond. I just leave them hanging, right? And then in that way, what I'm doing is I'm posturing strength. Like once the store closes, it's closed. I'm not coming back to you, And it's not I want to be mean to you type thing. It's just I don't have time for this kind of a thing, right? Like, for example, Sandra's a great example. Everybody in our community knows Sandra. Sandra has huge objections to quote unquote giving up her IP. Okay, cool. I asked her to be part of the AI. I think you've asked her to be part of the AI. I've never asked her for a personal piece, and I've never asked her to give up IP. But if she comes into the AI, she would have to give up IP to some extent. Like, she has to give up her rights to the character that she's created. But in terms of like exclusive mint rights and ownership rights, those would have to be given up because that's part of what we do, right? So if she has objections, I'm like, cool, not a problem. I asked her once and I've never asked her again, right? Now, you may have asked her, I don't know. I know a couple bosses have reached out to her to get pieces and they've had objections. And of course she came to the call and had her objections with IP and we went back and forth. But I will never ask her again for a piece. And it's not because, I don't like Sandra. That's not it at all. It's like that her mindset is not in the space where she's open to it. And it's not my job to convince, right? So I'm not going to posture like a beggar and show up and just like, please see it my way. No, screw that. No, you see it your way, perfectly cool. I'll see it my way, perfectly cool. And there's plenty of people in the marketplace for you to sell to. And there's plenty of people in the marketplace for me to buy from. And it's cool. Like, it's got to be a win-win or it's got to be no deal. We both have to win or we both have to walk away and wish the other person great luck. I love her art. I think it's fantastic. But it doesn't work in the context that we asked her to participate. So there's no point in beating a dead horse, so to speak, right? And likewise, in anything that we do, if you just pair this out, if you're trying to convince someone, you're never going to get headway. You need to lay out the case, like, here's what I'm trying to do, here's what I'm building, and you need to build, some sort of value in the conversation. For me, it's usually about status. I want to come to you because I find this piece gorgeous. I think everyone should love your work. I think that, at the end of the day, you're an artist that has the potential to break through to the next level. And I would love to host one of your pieces inside my gallery. That's a conversation I just had with the guy who runs Custom Horror today. And I just sent that message before we got on. Now, he might come back and say, well, I'm not interested in doing that. I'd be like, cool, no problem, man. If anything changes, let's have a conversation. Like, I love your work. I'd love to feature it. But regardless of what they say, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm cool either way. Like, I love you either way. I don't care. I'm just on to the next one because there's too many to get stuck. Like, don't worry about it. Just move on to the next person. And the thing is, like, it's going to take work. Like, if anything worthwhile is going to require a tremendous amount of effort and energy and money or time or whatever, whatever you have to, whatever resource you're putting into it, if you want it to be great, just get ready because it's going to cost you something. So I can't tell you how many times I've literally typed out the same conversation over and over and over and over and over again, right? And to be honest with you, it gets really old typing out, hey, here's what I'm doing. I'm trying to mirror the real world, blah, 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 blah. And it's like 3 or 4 or 5 paragraphs long. But that's what the situation calls for if I want to build a gallery that I feel like is worthy of my time and energy and effort. So I'm willing to pay that price, when I have time to do those types of things. So again, just don't get attached to the outcomes. Like, when you're trying to sell someone an idea, hey, they may say yes, they may say no. It's not about you, it's about them. And you have to just realize I'm on to the next one. There's plenty of fish in the sea, and there's really no need to get bogged down in the minutia with this one particular person. And maybe in the future, after you've built a solid gallery, they may come back to you and say, hey, you know what? I want to revisit the conversation, right? They want to know that their work is going to go someplace where it's honored and cared for, and there's a certain amount of status associated with it. And you create that by having a track record and demonstrating a body of work that does those things, right? So again, it's a be, do, have kind of world. You be the person who does the things and then you get what you want. It's be, do, have. Most people in this space want to have it and then think about maybe becoming and doing the work later. That's not how it works. You got to be the person who does the work and then you'll have the things. And if you do enough of the work, like, let's say you had 15 artists on your list that you wanted to contact and you send them all the same messaging and maybe 3 of them respond, maybe 1 of them or 2 of them says, yeah, I'm down, let's do it, right? Okay, well, you just did, like 15x the work to get two pieces in your gallery. And it's always going to be that way because there's going to be more no's than yeses in the world if you want to create anything great. And if you're smart, you just go as fast as you can to get to the next one.
Absolutely, yeah, and really really good advice. I mean, when it comes to convincing in the space, it's like I just received a message today from an artist. She was actually reaching out to me because I think she wanted to be part of the artist incubator, and I said, yeah, I checked out your art. It looks cool and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, she started basically trying to sell me one of her pieces. She was like, yeah, look at the marketplace. I got this, I got that. I was like, yeah, cool, I'll check it out. And it started to feel like she almost was begging me to buy one of her pieces, right? Like it was like, that kind of like dragged me away from wanting one of her pieces because she was
Yes.
like right, like it's like if a girl is hitting on you and she's making it too easy for you, it's like not hard to get anymore, like you don't want it. So it was like she was like, hey, please buy it, like don't you want one, like I can give you a discount, blah blah blah. And I was like, yeah, I'll check it out, like I don't know. And yeah, that's for some reason that's why convincing someone is probably, or trying to convince, that easily turns into begging. And yeah. Oh, I thought my sound was gone again
No, no, no.
with what you did.
No, no, no.
But yeah, that's definitely hard.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a status game. Again, like, X is fucking wild with status games, right? Like, so and so bought my piece, or so and so sold my piece, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's so bullshit. But like, you have to play the status game to some degree if you want to be successful. And what that artist did when they started, trying to convince you to purchase from them is they lowered their status, and it immediately was a turnoff. And so if you do the same thing, like if like if I went to Sandra right now and I'm like, oh, please, pretty please, would you please just come on, be a part of it, right? She'd be like, get the fuck out of here, you needy piece of shit, right? Like, the money and like status runs from need faster than anything, right? So if you want to project strength and project professionalism, you don't want to come from need, you want to come from service. And so when I talk to an artist, I'm trying to project the idea of, I'm doing you a service by showcasing your work in my gallery. That's the status that I have. And they're like, well, if someone's like, well, I don't want to be a part of your gallery, I'm like, fine, on to the next one. And I'm doing the same thing. But I'm not going to sit and try and convince. If you do that, you're going to lose status. If you lose status, you lose the game. And that's just the way it works. So, don't beg. If you're one of our bosses out there trying to build a personal gallery, never, ever, ever beg. Cut those people off and they will respect you more. If someone's mean to you, I would just say, well, I appreciate it. I only ask once. So if something happens in the future and you change your mind, reach out to me. And then you're on to the next thing. And no matter what they respond with, you just don't respond. Right. And this is true of all relationships. Like if someone's going to try and lord something over you, or, put you in a position where they expect you to beg, or if they wrong you and they don't want to, sort of own up to it, you have to give that relationship or that interaction time, and that person needs to come back to you. If you go begging to them, then you immediately lose status, and you've already lost the the quote unquote relationship war in that particular scenario. So yeah, status is everything when it comes to this stuff. Project strength and don't be needy. That's the worst thing you can be.
Yep, absolutely. Could not agree more. All right. We covered the crypto markets. We jumped a little bit into our galleries. Now let's chat a little bit about the GoodFellas and what's coming. So we got the Artist Incubator drop by Cosmonica coming up in 11 days, actually, not too long anymore. And then we got some work that is being done on some Siren traits by Daria. And you should definitely check out her timeline because she is trying to cover the process of creating those traits. And I think just today she she made a post where she said that she films a video of her reworking the Siren trait, which is really cool. I love, seeing these work in progress videos. And yeah, she told us that she plans to do something like that. And I think it's really cool. So definitely check that out. And on top of that, we have already received some new traits. Daria just sent us a couple of new ones, I think a few days ago. And I think we got like a new hair trait. We got a lot of cool outfits. Yeah. Do I have to ask you, how did you like those pieces?
Yeah, they're fantastic. Daria is elevating the art well beyond what it initially was. And I think once you guys see these traits, I mean, you're going to be kind of blown away by it. She is what I would consider a perfectionist when it comes to executing her ideas. And everything that I've seen so far has been so well executed, so well done, perfectly matches the previous work that she's done, fits right into the collection. I mean, the pieces are just fantastic. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. So I'm excited to see how people receive the work. I know it's going to be really, over the top good, and I hope people can see and respect, what goes into creating something that well. And to that end, we're going to be reworking some of the OG art with Francois. Hopefully, if I can get him on a call, and we will, go from there in terms of elevating that work as well. So I'm excited for everything that's going on there. Artwork wise, we're never going to settle for less. You guys should know that by now. And I think that once this work drops and the new pieces are generated, you guys are just gonna, you're just gonna love them. So what else can I say? I mean, Daria is Daria. She never misses, and she's like an art sniper, man. She always delivers the goods. She always hits the target, and I have no doubts in my mind that she's gonna do the same thing this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Jason said, the traits are absolutely gorgeous, and I can't wait for the people to see them. Right? Like it's always a little, um, yeah, it's almost like it's making me sad that we got the pieces, we got to see them already, and it's probably still going to take some time until we have the next Sirens batch. But yeah, people can expect them in the near future at least. So I'm looking forward to share these great traits with everyone and have another great Sirens batch, of course, including a lot of new traits, a new one of one, and it's going to be great. But before we do all that, we will have Nika's Artist Incubator drop in 11 days. Friday, she will join us on Spaces and chat a little bit about her as an artist, about her art and her distinctive style, of course. And if you have not checked out the latest episode of the Mint Mob Spaces, we had Scott on that episode. Shoutouts to him again. He talked a little bit, or he actually talked a lot about IP. We had a great conversation with him. He is like an IP lawyer. He goes to court. I think it's so cool, like because he's such a cool guy. And when I imagine him stepping into the court, it's probably like he's the coolest guy in the room, definitely. And yeah, we appreciate him joining us. Of course, there will maybe be a part two of that in the near future, because obviously you can talk a lot about IP. I still got many questions, and I hope that one day he'll join the conversation again and speak a little bit about that topic. And yeah, this Friday we will have another space, of course. I'm not sure if Nika is going to. No, she's not going to join this one because that's why it got postponed, of course. But yeah, we'll definitely chat a little bit about the things coming in the future. Maybe about galleries. Like the gallery topic is like ongoing forever for some reason. Like people are still excited and interested about that. And one last thing, the distribution of core pieces is going on, of course, still. I think I received some pieces from Charlie and STC this week, so I'll get them out ASAP. And if you still have any of these old P NFTs in your, I think they're called P NFTs, right? The old ones? Yeah, in your wallet. Yeah, send them over. We'll get them swapped for core pieces. And yeah, unfortunately, most of them seem to be stuck still. But if they're stuck, don't worry. Just send us a screenshot of the pieces you own, and we'll get the core pieces out as soon as possible. This was it for today, I guess. Jason, did we forget anything?
I don't think so. Yeah, the only thing was, just remembering that if a piece is quote unquote stuck in staking, we got you covered. Don't worry about it. If it's ever released, we'll get rid of it. But you can hide those old collections in your wallet because they are completely delisted from Magic Eden and they will never come back. So, yeah, feel free to just screenshot all that stuff, get it to Alex. We'll get that out as soon as humanly possible, and we'll continue to build on the code base so that you can actually view these things in a much, much more elegant manner. But yeah, other than that, man, I think we're good to go.
Awesome, man. So we are sending out love to everyone listening. Thank you guys for being here consistently, for showing up on Spaces. We hope everyone has a great week, and we'll see you guys on Friday. Bye bye.
Take care, guys. See ya.